Yeah, see, now we're live.
Okay, hold on. I'm sending the link.
Okay, so
I'm going to tell everybody to come on over.
well, let me send you the direct link.
I think I just went to YouTube.
Okay. Oh, you found it?
Yeah.
You can see us? Okay, I'm posting now as well on Facebook. Unbelievable, eh? It's my channel, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Weird.
There we are.
I'm getting there. Got it?
I got it. Okay, so if you're in the chat now, we've got a couple people that are live. Just give us a couple minutes. We realized we had a problem with the channel.
And we have to move over to the church channel. Yeah, because the Father Ted channel was not working, which is kind of funny. Okay. There we got 3 people. Hey, everybody. Okay, one sec. We're doing well. We're doing well. We're doing very well. All right. People are coming over. Sorry, apologies to everybody. I know it's like 18 minutes in here. But we're just getting the word out to come over to this channel.
Did you post it on Facebook as well, Father?
I did, and I'm sharing it again right now, like on all the main groups. Five people. All right. I'm getting there. All right. Because I think we can, oh, we have 7 people now. Okay, I shared it everywhere. So, okay, sorry everybody. So welcome. Finally, it's 20 after 7. It took us 20 minutes because we had, it turned out we thought we had router and signal problems, but it's not that. We actually had a problem with the Father TED Talks channel, actually. So for some reason, every time I was trying to go live there, as you guys could see, it would show, you know, it would just clock. It was buffering. So for some reason, it was the channel, because as soon as I switched over to the St. Constant Helen channel, which is what we stream all our services, like we did just a half an hour ago with the Akathist, it works just fine. So there are 8 of you here, and I got Tina Krepus right next to me here on the iPad because due to social distancing and the whole pandemic that's happening, we thought that it would be better and safer to meet like this as opposed to sitting side by side here at the church. So I don't know, can everybody hear Tina? Tina, you want to say something?
Hi, everybody. Hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I hope so. So can some people, can anybody type in the comment section? Can you guys hear her? I don't know. Feel free to use the comment section. Tina, you want to explain how this is going to work? There's 10 people here already, so.
Awesome. Okay, so basically the format for today, since we're doing this live, is hoping to get some live questions from all of you that are watching. This is kind of a crazy time for everybody, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the virus that shall not be named. And we're hoping to obviously answer questions about that if you have them, but really just more of a discussion about orthodoxy, about things that are going on right now with your family, in your homes, questions about your faith, which is what we always do here at Father TED Talks, rather than just we, more so Father than I. But so if you have questions, please post them. We've said this before and we'll say it again. There's really no silly questions. Trust me, I have tried Father Ted many times, tried to get a silly question, but they're all good questions, he says. So just feel free to ask whatever you like. We already do have a question. So I don't know if Father, if you want to hop in with that question, or did you want to start something else?
Yeah, so I'll just because the way the setup is, maybe you can read the questions, Tina. Is anybody? Do we have a question? Oh, we have a question from before. Yeah, if anybody has a question, please type it in the comment section below, because it'll pop up on our screen and then we can answer them live for you guys. So we'll wait to. We'll start with one of our somebody had sent us in some questions before. So we'll start with one of those and I'll try to answer as best I can. And then as people send in questions, Tina will be, taking them down, and then she'll read them out in sequence. So try to get your questions in. Yeah.
So we've got a question actually from when we were over on the other channel. So we'll start with that.
Perfect.
So the question, let me just read it as it stands. The question is, this is my first year doing the Lent fast. I'm finding myself struggling and becoming irritated. How is fasting supposed to encourage the faith when it's making me feel discouraged? I think we can all relate.
Sure. Okay, so that's a good one. Feeling discouraged. Well, join the club as far as feeling discouraged. But fasting, perhaps seeing fasting for what it is will help with the whole discouragement part. And so I'll tell you what fasting is and what it's not. First, I'll start with what fasting is not. Fasting is not a set of rules. Nor is it a type of, checklist of things that we need to do to make ourselves, good people, or a number of things that we need to do so that we are, quote unquote, worthy to receive communion or to approach the holy resurrection, right? So a lot of times people feel that fasting is kind of like something that is imposed on them by the church, so that they can, participate in certain sacraments and Holy Communion, things like that. And so in that, from that approach, which is like a punitive approach, like if I do this, I get the reward. If I don't do this, I don't get the cookie, right? This is not the proper way to kind of view fasting, right? So rather, let's shift our focus, right? So let's look at fasting as a tool out of many, many tools that we have to help make us stronger spiritually, right? So think about the gym. I use the gym analogy so much, right? So the church is like a spiritual gym, right? And so when we go to the gym, we have a lot of different equipment and classes and different things at our disposal to help us grow. So we have our treadmill for our cardio, we have our free weights and the machines to build muscle. We have our Zumba class, for again, cardio and things like that. We have our dietitian who helps us with our food so that we can, either lose weight or have proper nutrition in our bodies. So all these different aspects, this is exactly how the church functions, right? And everything that we do, whether it be participating in the sacraments, whether it is going to church, whether it is fasting or praying at home, any of these things, they're all there to help us. So what is fasting? Fasting is there really to set us free, because we are all slaves. And what do I mean by that? Is basically the church is there to emancipate us from the things that would control us. So when we say, for example, we need to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays, if I can't stop myself from eating, for example, a hamburger on a Wednesday, that means that the hamburger controls me. I am powerless against it. And the funny thing is that the hamburger is just a piece of meat. It's an inanimate object. It's not even like an evil mastermind that is controlling me. It's a piece of meat that has no brain, no feelings, but for some reason I bow down to it. And because I can't stop myself from partaking of that, I am a slave to that. And this is what the church warns us against. It doesn't want us to be slaves to the passions, and especially to things. It wants our mind and our soul to be more powerful than our bodies. And so we train ourselves through fasting. It's one of the tools that we have to emancipate ourselves from the things that would control us so that we are truly free. And so that's how you have to view fasting. And, we fail. It's not a checklist like, I fasted well this time, I didn't fast well the other time, I did all the right things. No, think of it as, if I've never fasted before, I probably shouldn't try to do the full fast the first time around, because that's like going to the gym and trying to bench press like 250 pounds when I've never bench pressed before. I'm going to hurt myself and I'm going to get discouraged, like you're getting discouraged. So it's better with the guidance of a spiritual father, of a priest that we know, to start slow. So I usually tell people who have never fasted before, start small. Like, try this Lent, not maybe don't eat meat, but have dairy, and see how you go for the 40 days. It's a long stretch. It's 40 plus Holy Week, right? So it's 47, it's almost 50 days. Try that and see how you go. And then if that goes well, then at the next big fast, which is the Apostles' Fast or the Dormition of the Virgin Mary fast in August, try to add something more. So you build up slowly, and it's an exercise in humility. It's an exercise in self-control and things like that. So don't think of it as something that, I can't do it all, or I'm not doing it correctly. It's crushing me, or it's making me feel discouraged. Don't be discouraged. The fact that you're trying is amazing. So, that's, I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's a complex one for fasting. So I hope that answered your question.
Well, and feel free to follow up with that as well if you'd like. But it's just interesting to me, and that's why I love doing Father Ted Talks, is probably not the answer you'd expect. You'd probably expect the answer from your yaya or whoever you get a lot of your religious knowledge from, that you have to do this way or it is wrong. And the idea that that's not the case is, I think, and we'll see now in the comments, is comforting.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next question, but of course, follow up if you'd like. If you'd like further clarification, just put it in the comments. So here's the next question. So it says, hello, and thank you for doing this. I totally understand why the churches need to close. It is, of course, the natural, rational thing to do, and we need to protect everyone, including the clergy. My question is, how are we supposed to come to terms with the idea that all of a sudden the sacraments are quote-unquote optional in a way? I know it's a temporary measure, and I'm not scandalized, just maybe confused. So how do we sort of come to terms with that?
Okay, that's a really good question. So I'll work a little bit backwards from your question. When you at the end you said, all of a sudden the sacraments are optional. They're not optional. The sacraments. So let's be clear. Number one, nowhere has the church taught the people or made any kind of pronouncement that the sacraments are optional. They're the lifeblood of our faith. Like, the fact that we can't participate physically in the sacraments right now is a problem. It's a big problem. It's cutting off our, the life force of the church, right? And so the church recognizes this. This is not, saying, suddenly now it's optional. It's not optional, but it's a bad situation. We have a global pandemic, and because none of us have lived through this, because the last global pandemic that happened was the Spanish flu in 1917. So it's 100 years ago, right? So maybe our grandparents or our great grandparents actually lived through that. And, there was 60 million people that died in that. So we have no concept of what a pandemic is, although in the history of the church, this is nothing new in the 2,000 years, right? It's happened many times. So it's very strange to us. But this is not our fault, and this is also not something that we can control. And it's also something that we're kind of forced into. We're forced into this position. And so it's not that the sacraments are optional. They're not. The church is just trying to be optimistic and trying to be positive. So we're trying to find what little avenues we have to keep our faith alive, right? So, for example, if you look at Archbishop Sotirios of Canada, he did his best to keep the churches open as long as he could, even when other places and other churches had shut down already, or they had already stopped they closed their doors. He tried to keep the doors open as long as possible until finally we were forced to do it by the local authorities. And so and even then, now that we have the doors locked, we're still mandated as priests to continue doing the services, albeit with empty churches and with all of you following online, so that at least the core, the heart of the church, the heart of the body of Christ is still beating, right? Now, we may not be able to feel, our hands or our feet, we have a disconnection from all of you to a certain degree. And that's really, really heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching for all of you, and it's heart-wrenching for us as priests, to be doing liturgy and to be doing service and to have nobody in the church, right? And so it's a big problem. This is not a substitute, what we're doing right now. It's not a substitute to watch at home and not actually receive Holy Communion or receive Holy Unction or to be able to participate properly in confession. But it is the best that we can do right now under the circumstances. And so we continue to do what we're doing, and we continue to train ourselves at home, follow as best we can the services online. Thank God we have the technology that we can see this, because 50 years ago we didn't have this, or even 30 years we didn't have this ability. or even 10 years ago, we didn't have, as quick, Wi-Fi and, uploading speeds and things like that, where we were able to do this. At least we can keep some type of connection with our churches, right? But I think we're realizing that how much we need the church, how much we miss her. A lot of times we take her for granted, and sometimes we don't show up for weeks and weeks on end, and we just take it for granted that she'll always be there for us. And now that we don't have her, we realize what a giant gaping wound the absence of the church is from us, right? So we are doing the best we can. The sacraments are not optional, but for now, this is what we have to do to keep people safe, to save lives. And this is take it as part of our humility, part of our kanona, part of our struggle, our ascetic struggle during Lent for the life of the world. We are doing what we have to do to save other human beings, both Orthodox and non-Orthodox, Christians and non-Christians. We're taking one for the team, for the good of our fellow human beings. And there's nothing more Christian than that. So I hope
it's an uncomfortable feeling, that's for sure. And one thing I didn't understand very much growing up, which I understood more as I grew older, is how important participation in the services is. And that does feel very strange now. We have another question coming up, but just as a follow-up to that, and something that you and I spoke of before we started, was given that we're in this position where we can't be in our church, what are some of the ways that we can practice our faith at home in practical ways? Just, I'm sure there's a million different ways, but what are some of the things that we could be doing maybe to fill that void a little bit?
Okay, that's a great question, and there is a ton of information online right now, right? So if you look on Facebook, if you look on just Google it, you will find a ton of Orthodox content of how to pray during these times, and different things you can do with your kids, activities and readings and things like that, right? So it's actually quite easy to find things like that. But just as a rule of thumb, what do I do with my kids? Well, assuming in our home we have a prayer corner, or what we call an ikonisma, which is like a focal point in our house. Many of us, if we don't have one, then definitely our parents or grandparents have, but we should all have a focal point, like a little shrine, which is sometimes in our parents, it's in the kitchen, or it could be somewhere else, but it can really be anywhere where the family congregates, right? There should be a prayer corner, and in that prayer corner, there should be preferably like a little oil lamp or a candle, and maybe some main icons, Christ, the Virgin Mary. I have in my prayer corner at home, and I've posted some pictures on Facebook. We have our patron saints, my wife, myself, my children, we have all those icons arranged there. And that is the focal point where we can do prayer together. And so I think it's really important that every day, especially during this quarantine, but it should be happening all the time. As an aside, it's kind of funny that this quarantine is forcing us to do the things that perhaps we were neglecting to do, but we should have been doing anyways, like spending time with our families more, not neglecting our children or our spouses, not neglecting our prayer life, going out and being with nature a little more, being more socially responsible, being more frugal, with our expenditures and our food and all this kind of stuff. So all the things that we should be doing as Orthodox Christians, and I said this in my sermon last Sunday, the sermon on I sermon, which was like, we've been training for this. We should be doing this all the time, and now we're realizing how ill-equipped we are because maybe we've neglected that lifestyle, right? So pray with your family. It doesn't matter what you pray. Like, you can pray from an Orthodox prayer book, you can do morning prayers, or you can do evening prayers, you can do midday prayers. What I'm doing right now with my kids is that there's a really nice service that I've posted on Facebook all over the place. You can find it. There's been a really beautiful service that's been written for the coronavirus, like it petitions to God for salvation and deliverance from the coronavirus. And I've been reading this in English. It's in English, although there are Greek versions as well out there. And I've been doing this with my kids, and we do it once a day. It takes about 5-7 minutes to do. It's not very long because my kids are very young too, so their attention span is not very good. But it's important for them to remember the world, to remember those who are suffering, to remember the doctors and the physicians and everybody who are on the front lines. And this is a really good way to do it. So that's one way. Of course, if we can fast, we should fast. And also take this time to talk to your kids. Spend more time speaking about the faith. Maybe talk about, their patron saints. Maybe look up online, if you don't know the lives of their patron saints, who they're named after, and get them familiarized with that. There's a ton of things you can do, right? But definitely prayer, at least once a day with the family is important. Fasting is important. Prayer before meals and after meals, things like that. So, and also one more thing is it's important, I think, to also help other human beings in your own way. Maybe we can't go out and see them, but maybe we can like pick something up for somebody who's a shut-in, or maybe we can share if somebody we know doesn't have food, or we can donate online to different relief efforts and things like that. There's a myriad of things that we can do to help those people who are suffering right now across the world. And so I think we should definitely do that as well. That's the other aspect of fasting.
So I kind of put Father Ted on the spot a little bit before we started when I asked about resources. So he has agreed to post after our live chat and maybe give him some time so he can compile them all. Some resources for us to use at home. I love the idea of talking to our kids about who they are named after. I didn't even think about that. And a lot of us parents are thinking about what to homeschool our children with. That would be a great idea.
I have some books if you want me to show you.
Yeah. And then just maybe something. Yeah, sure. Show and tell.
Yeah. So because I knew that some people had asked about, and they've been asking me about not only homeschooling, but just educating ourselves. So books, some really good books that are out there. There's a ton of Orthodox books right now, right? Orthodox publishers, Ancient Faith Publications, Light and Life Publishing, St. Vladimir Seminary Press. There's a ton of publishers out there that you can find, and so much Orthodox content. But I have a few good books here that you might like. So first of all, there are 3 books about prayer and 2 books about raising children in the Orthodox faith for parents, right? So one of them is this tiny little book called When You Pray. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's When You Pray. I'll post this stuff in the Father TED Talks Facebook group, and also I'll try to post it in the comments on this video when it's done. So this is by Joseph Latendre. This is just a cute little book. Just gives you some pointers on. It's called A Practical Guide to an Orthodox Prayer Life. So that's really, really good. I highly recommend this. A really, really good book about like a devotional guide to being an Orthodox. It's called A Faith Encouraged by Father Barnabas Powell. I know him. He's on Ancient Faith Radio as well. He has some podcasts. He's a wonderful human being. And this book is really good because it kind of goes through, it's like a devotional guide on how to what to read day to day, how to have kind of like a daily spiritual life. So again, A Faith Encouraged, right? A devotional guide to being Orthodox on purpose. Really, really good book to read. A basic teaching of the faith, if somebody just wants to kind of learn more about their faith, like the basic teachings, and they don't know where to start. Tons of books out there, lots of catechism books out there for children, for adults, whatever. This is one of the newer ones that have come out. It's a systematic one. It's called Know the Faith, a handbook for Orthodox Christians and Inquirers. Know the Faith. Okay. This is by Father Michael Chambour, right? It's printed by Ancient Faith Publishing, right? And it's really, really good. Just the basics of the teachings of the Orthodox faith. Again, really, really good. Know the Faith. Okay. And 2 books for children. These are really excellent. One of them is called Our Church and Our Children by Sophie Kulomzin, right? And this is really, really good, by St. Vladimir Seminary Press. Talks about, Christian practices for parents, how to raise their children in the Orthodox faith, different, methods and things like that. Really, really good book. And probably one of my favorite books out of all these is by my good friend, Alyssa Bielatich and Caleb Shoemaker. They're both Orthodox Christians. They live in the States. They both have really good podcasts on Ancient Faith Radio, along with myself. Alyssa Bielatich has a really wonderful podcast on Ancient Faith Radio called Raising Saints. If you look on an Ancient Faith Radio, which talks about raising Orthodox children. This book is called Blueprints for the Little Church, Creating an Orthodox Home. Really, really wonderful book, right? By Alyssa Bielatich, right? If you look at my Father TED Talks, you'll see that I actually interviewed her once on one of the early episodes about raising kids in the Orthodox faith. This book is excellent. Like it just, gives so many wonderful pointers of how to have a prayer corner, how to pray with your kids, how to survive going to church with your kids, especially when they're young, right? So those are like the books that I would recommend. Again, I'm not getting any royalties for these or any kind of commission, right? These are just books that I like. There's tons of other books out there. So hopefully those are helpful.
And one thing you keep mentioning is Ancient Faith Radio. So that's a great resource with lots of podcasts if you're not on it already. And then one that you recommended to me ages ago is an app called Pray Daily, which I reference sometimes, but I'm sure you'll include all of those in your resource list.
Actually, it's Pray Always.
Pray Always. Mine says Pray Daily, but I guess that's because I have a Samsung.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, because it should be called Pray Always, which is like an Orthodox app. It looks like this. It's really, really good. And it's like a little Orthodox Cairo there. And also there's the daily readings from the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, which is also really excellent. And it gives you like your daily readings of the day. And you can't see it because it's too bright, but these are really, really good apps to have on your phone or on your iPad, because it gives you like a myriad of daily prayers that you can read. So.
Okay, Father, we have a couple of bigger type questions. So we started at around 7:20, so maybe we'll go to about 8:20. But
I'll go as long as you guys want to go. We can go over an hour if you want.
Okay. So here we go. So one question we have here is, probably something some people are thinking. What gives the government the right to determine a lawful gathering is, and what stops them from making gatherings permanently illegal? What will it take for the church to say this is too much?
That's a big one. That's more of a political question as well, as it is a religious one. I think obviously there always needs to be a balance between the rights of the individual and the rights of the group, right, or the state, right? So I understand that a lot of Orthodox Christians are upset, and I understand that they feel, and it's not just in this country. The government shut down the church in Greece as well, and a lot of people were upset about that. And in Greece, they had even more power to do it because the church is a state-run church, it's state-funded, right? So they have the right to do it. Whereas here, we are not state-funded. We have a little more independence. But it is a difficult thing. And a lot of times, we don't like to be told what to do, and we don't like to have anything imposed on us. However, in cases where in extreme cases like this, the reality is that they're trying to do the best they can. Now, whether the governments abuse that authority in times of a pandemic or in times of distress, that's a different story. And if they do that, that's horrible. And of course, we will deal with that, or the people should deal with that when it comes. I don't think that that's what they've done up to this moment, to be honest with you. I think that they're trying to stay ahead of the pandemic to make sure that we don't overwhelm our healthcare system, because it's not the issue of people getting sick and it's spreading to everybody, but rather how fast people are getting sick and how fast we can minister to them. And so if there's an overwhelming amount that and we can't keep up, then that's when more people die than need to die, right? So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to safeguard human life, and I think that they're doing the best they can. I know there's I know it's a touchy issue. It's a very touchy issue, even amongst us priests. And when this first happened, even us priests, we got really upset, and we started getting angry and, voicing our concerns, and we don't want to close our churches, and we don't want to close our churches. And we don't want to stop ministering to our people. But then as our heads cool a bit and we pray a bit, and maybe we allow for humility to work within us, we start to see the bigger picture, and we start to understand that, there is something bigger than just getting what we want, right? And so this is a difficult thing. This is a difficult pill for us to swallow. There's always the debates where we're going on and on. Now they've kind of settled down. At the very beginning, a few weeks ago, the debates about Holy Communion and about whether it's going to get you sick or not. And of course, people who don't believe in the real presence of Christ, and people who do believe in the real presence of Christ, all these kind of things, right? In the end, the Holy Sacraments cannot get us sick, but congregating together can get us sick. So there is no law, there is no rule that if we all congregate together, that nothing will happen to us. It's just not true. Like during the Spanish flu epidemic in 1917, there were whole parishes, Orthodox parishes, that were wiped out by the flu, not because of Holy Communion, not because of the sacraments being administered, but because people were congregating together. They didn't know any better, and there were whole parishes that died because it was such a deadly illness, right? So it's not the Holy Communion that will make you sick. It's waiting in line to get the Holy Communion that will make you sick, right? And not only that, but it's also just even the jumping from house to house, right? one of the really difficult decisions that some of us as priests have to make is that, we have a lot of people who are messaging us and saying, Father, come to my house and commune me, come to my house and give me confession. I don't care as long as I get the sacraments, right? And we feel your pain. But on the other hand, what you have to understand is that the more homes we visit, the more we expose not only ourselves, but we also expose you, because we could be carriers and not even know about it, right? And so these issues are difficult, right? And also because we're trying to keep the churches going, and we're trying to, like, quite literally we're single-handedly. I got myself, my chanter comes for services. I'm doing everything here, the cleaning, the maintenance, everything, because we can't have anybody else in the church. And so we need to keep the heart. Remember we said earlier about the heart pumping, right? The lifeblood of the church. The sacraments need to continue. The divine services need to continue. Holy Week needs to be prayed, even if it's just by one or two people. If I get sick, then the church shuts down. And so we all have to take a deep breath. We have to have a little humility. We need to pray, and we need to understand that we need to protect not only our priests, but our people, and keep the church going as best we can. I'm sorry if that's not the answer that some people want to hear, but it is the answer that I have, and I believe in it. And I think that the government is doing the best they can in this time. Whether they overstep in the future, we'll see. And of course, we can take a stand. But I think for now, they're just doing the best they can. That's my opinion.
So, a sort of related question, and we knew the discussion would head this way, and that's okay, and we're happy to take it this way. But the question that came up next is, Father Ted, are these the signs of the end of time? At the end of times, the Jehovah's Witness parishioners have called me and are saying that these are the signs of the end of times. Can you address that?
So, if we knew when the end of times were going to happen, then we would basically we would know more than what Christ said in the scriptures, right? So, what did Christ say? Christ said that no one knows when that final day will come, not even the angels in heaven. And to be emphatic, even though he was God, he is God, he said not even the Son, only the Father knows when that time will come. Okay? So no one knows, and no one will know. There will be signs, but those signs can be misinterpreted. So in every generation, and every time there's been plagues and wars and all this kind of stuff, people have always said this is the end times. Okay? When there was the Black Plague in Europe, everybody thought it was the end time, because more than half the world's population at the time died. So, people thought this is the end. There were bodies in the streets, right? When World War I happened, people thought it was the end times. When World War II happened, they thought it was the end times. A myriad of dictators and evil leaders have been called the Antichrist. Every time we face pandemics, every time we face calamity, people think it's the end times. The point is that it's irrelevant whether it's the end times or not from an Orthodox point of view, because we're supposed to be living every day, not in fear, but in preparation. We're going to have Holy Week coming up, right? In just over a week, our Holy Week will start. And we will start with those beautiful bridegroom services. And what do we chant when the bridegroom comes out, when the priest goes around the church the first night with the icon of the bridegroom, which is Christ, in the red gown and the crown of thorns and the reed in his hand? He is the bridegroom coming to meet his bride, the church, right? To give himself up for her. What do we chant in that hymn? That hymn tells us everything, gives us the answer to this question. It says, "Behold, the bridegroom comes at midnight, and blessed is the servant whom he shall find watching. And again, unworthy is the servant whom he shall find sleeping. Beware, therefore, O my soul, do not be weighed down with sleep, lest you be given up to death, and lest you be shut out of the kingdom. But rouse yourself, crying, Holy, holy, holy art thou, O Lord. The prayers of the Fr.TEDTalks, have mercy on us." So this beautiful hymn, it's one of my favorite. I get goosebumps every time I hear it or I chant it. It says that, and Christ says it. It's the words of Christ, the kingdom of God is going to come like a thief in the night. You're not going to expect it. You're not going to know when it's coming. And so you always have to be prepared. Always watch, right? So it's irrelevant for us as Orthodox Christians when the end times are going to happen. We don't sit there and freak out about it or worry about it. Oh, this is going to happen now. It's going to happen tomorrow. For us, I could die at any moment, right? I could get sick. I could get hit by a car. Something could happen. I could die at any moment. The point is, am I ready? And if everybody in the world saw their lives in this way and lived every day as if it were their last. And I don't mean going out and bungee jumping and doing crazy things, like the cliche, but rather living every life to be the best human being they could be, the best Orthodox Christian, the most kind, and not leaving anything to tomorrow. And every time we put our heads on the pillow at the end of the night, we know that we've done the best we can, and we ask forgiveness for the things we failed in. Then could you imagine what kind of a world we would have? We would have the most amazing world. We would have paradise on earth, right? So that's how the fathers and the holy fathers of the church and the Gerodikon, the sayings of the desert fathers, sayings of the fathers of Mount Athos, they always speak about this. They always say, keep your death in mind, keep the end in mind, but without despair, right? Without being afraid. Just, live your life to its fullest and be as kind and as good as you can be, and repent constantly, because you don't know when the master is coming. So that makes these worries and Jehovah's Witnesses and all these other people who are calling us, it makes it all irrelevant, for us, because we're always living for us in the end times, but in a positive way, not in a negative way.
Okay, thank you. Some tough questions. Thanks, everybody. We're going to take a big pivot, and we'll take a different question with a different direction. So it says, hi, I attend a Reformed church, but I've been studying Orthodoxy. I like the Orthodox view of the atonement, but it's difficult to not see the penal, substitutionary, legal type language in Scripture. How does Orthodoxy deal with this? Is it more that the atonement is multifaceted and each denomination emphasizes a different facet?
Very, very good question. Right. So, so coming from a Reformed tradition, you're coming from when you're dealing with atonement. Most of the views about atonement come from John Calvin. This kind of like the lineage that a lot of Reformed Protestant traditions come from. And of course, there's a strong emphasis on this kind of like legalistic approach to salvation. This is not present in the Eastern Orthodox Church. It wasn't present in the early church at all. This idea of atonement is it's something that exists, like the language does exist in the Bible, but it's how one interprets it, right? Like anything, right? So if you look at the Old Testament as opposed to the New Testament, you do find a slight dichotomy in the language. And what is the difference? The difference is that in the Old Testament, you have a lot of more punitive language, right? God is, going to punish me. God is going to be angry. God is a jealous God. God is going to smite me, right? Whereas in the New Testament, you have all this emphasis on love and forgiveness and, an intimate relationship with Christ and with God as a father, right? Why does this difference exist in the Bible? It's not that God changes. Some people, some people believe that, the God of the Old Testament is different than the God of the New Testament. It's actually heresy in the church. It's not God that changes. It's us that change. So think about children. For those of you who have children, and for those of you who used to be children, you will remember that children, as they grow, their perception of their parents changes. And so does mankind. So if you think of mankind as a whole, as one person, lump us all in together as one human being, right? If you think about human beings, humanity in the Old Testament, humanity was an infant, and then later a toddler, and then a teenager, right? So as humanity grows, their perception of God changes, right? So our children, I know my twins are 8 years old, and my my youngest is 5. Their perception of me is very punitive, in the sense that they know that I love them. They know that I will do anything for them. But when they do something wrong, they think, oh no, daddy's going to find out and I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be punished. I'm going to go to my room. And so there is this kind of like relationship where I'm afraid of angering my parent. And that's because just the stage of development that they're in. And so this is their perception. And as they grow, as we all grow, and we hit young adulthood, our relationship with our parent evolves. And when we become parents and we have our own children, then definitely our relationship with our parent changes again, right? And we begin to understand the way our parents raised us and the type of we lost Tina, so I gotta get her back. So when she calls again, we'll answer. Our relationship with our parents changes, and this becomes like a more loving relationship, and it becomes the. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to do two things at the same time here because we have some technical difficulties with Tina trying to call in. So I'm just trying to change the Wi-Fi here. There we go. Sorry, guys. So our relationship changes, right? That's what I was trying to get at. I'm sorry about the long-winded answer. And because of that, then of course our perception changes. Oh, there's Tina with her little one, Maria. Oh, so cute. Right? So it's the same thing in the Bible. In the Old Testament, people's perception of God was this punitive perception. And in the New Testament, when mankind has come to a certain maturity, God becomes one of us. He incarnates. He becomes Jesus Christ. The Word becomes a human being, and there is a more intimate relationship. And so the language changes, the perception changes, right? And so this is why we emphasize not only the love, but also this medicinal approach to the church, right? So for us, for example, when we do confession, it's not about punishment. It's not about feeling horrible about what you did because you already feel bad enough. It's not up to the priest to make you feel worse, nor is it about the priest doling out punishment. This is not the emphasis in the Orthodox Church. It is rather, I'm going to the doctor, I'm giving my symptomatology, and the doctor is diagnosing the problem and giving me the proper prescription, the proper medication to make me better. So it's always about becoming better. This is the emphasis in the Orthodox Church, at least, and this is how we greatly differ between us and, for example, Western Christianity, Catholicism, and also Protestantism in general. Sorry for the long-winded answer, guys. I'm sorry. We lost Tina right in the middle of it.
Sorry about that, and sorry to distract everybody. It is a meaty question and something that we can always address in other chats. I just wanted to take this opportunity now that I think we have a lot of people watching. I think, it's been a really long time since Father Ted and I have been able to do one of these. We've never done it live. If people like this format, I think I speak on behalf of Father Ted and myself that we'd love to do this again sometime.
Yeah.
And answer questions, especially now that maybe people are feeling disconnected because they can't be physically at church. If this is a format people like, we can definitely facilitate. In my case, it may be with Eleni on my lap. So I just want to say that if you do have questions, we've got an email address, Fr.TEDTalks@gmail.com, that you can always send questions to. That gives Father Ted a little bit of time to prepare as well, in terms of resources and answers, but always happy to do it live in the chat section. In case I have to duck out at the end, I think a really good way to spend the last few minutes, we had a couple of questions about Holy Week. I know you don't really know at this point what Holy Week is going to look like. It's never looked like this probably since the days of Turkish occupation. We don't really know what it's going to look like, but I think a couple of questions have come up about some advice. If it ends up being that Easter is like this in a virtual format, what can people do? Any advice for them? And again, we can always have another chat like this before Holy Week actually happens when you have a little bit more information. But is there any advice you have for people as they prepare for Holy Week?
So it's gonna be like this. That's the reality. We're all just trying to find our way. So you got to keep in mind that we priests as well, we've never done services like this before. We've never even conceived of doing a Holy Week alone. A lot of services, and we've never even thought about the logistics of it. And so it looks like it's going to be what we're doing now because it's 2 weeks away, not even. It's just over a week away when we start. And at least here in Toronto, I don't know where everybody else is right now in Canada or maybe another country in the States, somewhere else. In Toronto right now, the lockdown has been extended for 12 weeks. 12 weeks is a long, long time. It's almost 3 months, and it's going to take us to the end of June, which is scary when you think about it, because it doesn't only encompass most of Lent that we've had so far, but also Holy Week, like half of Lent, sorry, all of Holy Week, all of Pascha, St. George's, all of the Ascension, Pentecost. Like these are, it's the feast of feasts, and our churches are going to be empty. So it's a hard and a bitter pill to swallow, and it's probably going to be like this. Now, obviously, if something changes, if things go better than we think, if they lift the quarantine, then of course we will communicate with everybody as fast as we can. But as for now, it looks like it's going to be like this. So we have to do the best we can. And I think the only advice that I would give more than what I already gave before about how we pray at home is that take your faith seriously at home. And what do I mean by that? When you watch a service at home, or when you want to follow a service, be reverent. Like, don't, obviously we're busy, or we have children running around or whatever, but resist the urge to follow the services haphazardly, or play them in the background as if it doesn't matter. Or, just, I'm going to have the service running while I'm cooking dinner, this and that. Like, obviously, sometimes those things have to happen because we have families and we have this and that, right? But when possible, try to make the following of the Divine Liturgy, especially the Divine Liturgy, try to make it the main event in your house, even if it's on the TV. Like, gather your children, follow it, do your cross when the priest does his cross, do your prostrations, maybe have some icons, kiss the eye. Like, try to create a virtual experience of worship in your home and a reverence, so that your children, especially, and even for ourselves, we remind ourselves that, just because we can't physically be there, we can still be there in spirit for now. And we should still offer the same respect and the same worship to the Lord as we would if we were there. And the best thing that we can do is be respectful, right? So, don't make it something that is just kind of like a pastime. Like, I just have it on the back burner, because that diminishes the importance of the service, and also diminishes the sacrifice of those who are doing it for you, right? And it's not just the priest, but the chanters, sometimes the altar server who will come to open the church, to maintain the church. Those few people that are going to the churches and who are putting themselves at risk, leaving their homes and coming here. In some cases, elderly who should not be leaving their homes, who are more susceptible. Sorry, guys, I'm not sick. It's just my voice is hoarse. My voice is hoarse because I was chanting for an hour and a half, and then I'm doing this show too. So I need some water. It's also a sign of respect to them who are sitting here and doing it for you, right? So that's what I would advise. I would advise to be reverent even from our homes, to make our homes the church in the home, as St. John Chrysostom says, the house church, right? Sanctify your homes, put some incense on, light your lamps. I have my oil lamp going 24/7 for the world, praying, not just some days, but all the time, and every day we sense our house. Every day we pray for the coronavirus victims and those people who are working, and our medical professionals and our priests and everybody else who's trying to help. That's what I would say to do, even in crisis. We'll see. Maybe we'll find something else that's a better solution. I don't know how it would be. I've been racking my brain about it, and we are in communication with our archdiocese, and they're just doing the best they can in unprecedented times. So that's what I would think. We can take more questions too. Like, we don't have to finish with that, Tina. Like,
I'll look for some other questions. One thing I wanted to point out is that you often say to me when we have these conversations, is the church has been around a long time and has been through a lot, and we will get through this. It's going to look a little different than how we think it's going to look, but I loved your idea about making the church a home. I mean, we're all clearing our kitchen tables and making school at home. And removing distractions so our kids can do homework from home. So the same idea applies here for our services, for how to make it sort of a more church at home. Okay, so there is one more question. It says, any comments? We don't know if you're going to have a comment, but it says, any comment on Bill Gates' idea to have every person receive a vaccine with a digital certificate?
Yes, I've heard this before too, and I've heard people's trepidations. It's evil. It's going to be the mark of the beast. It's just another way that they will be able to control us, to put their stamp on us, and all this kind of stuff. Again, all this kind of apocalyptic, doom-saying kind of stuff that does exist even amongst some Orthodox, I would say do not trouble your hearts about it. Okay, whether it's true or not, whether there's sinister intentions by certain governments or evil companies, blah blah blah, etc., it should really not worry us. Why? Because in this world, first of all, this life is fleeting; it's passing, right? And we are supposed to be looking towards also not only this life but the next life. And we live in this world, and we know that we live under certain governments, and we know that we live under certain conditions, and this has always been the case, right? Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God, Christ says, right? And so, obviously our freedoms are important to us. Obviously, living in a free society is important to us, and yes, we should fight for those things. But at the same time, we shouldn't be too concerned or get scared with all these things that are happening, right? If you're concerned about the government knowing where you're going to go and where you've been, they already know that, guys, okay? If you have a cell phone, they know where you are, they know what you're doing. It's like the satellites can track you up to an inch. It's like we're already there. Like, it's not anything that is beyond what the government already has the capability, or anybody has the capability of doing, to be able to track. Everyone knows where we are at all times, and they know what we're doing. It's like, so we live our lives, and we pray, and we try to be the light of the world to everybody. Think of it this way. Think of it in reverse, right? If the government knows everything that we're doing at all times and sees everything, and there's no privacy, right? What an opportunity to be the light of the world, right? Like, what an opportunity to be wonderful, amazing human beings, kind and loving, and compassionate and prayerful and charitable. If everybody's watching, isn't this the time to preach the gospel with our lives, with our actions, right? So think of it this way. Always try to think of it positively. Try to think of how we can influence the world, right? If everybody's watching us, everybody's tracking us, well, okay. So if they're following us, where are we leading them to? This is what we have to ask ourselves, right? As Orthodox Christians, right? Tina, you are muted.
There we go.
There you go.
So I'm going to probably have to duck out. I have a very squirmy wormy here on my lap. But I think a really good question that I'm going to pose to you, Father, and then, of course, I will leave it in your very, very capable hands. Someone's asking about any words for anyone that might be feeling isolated, alone, or afraid. You talked very much about how we're still getting our food in grocery stores, but we're missing our spiritual food. And we know a lot of people, ourselves and the elderly, are feeling a little bit like they're very isolated in general, and now they've sort of been isolated from their church. What advice do you have for them, or any words for them?
Okay, that's a big one too. So it is, again, that's a big problem, right? Like people who are shut-ins, people who are isolated, people who do not have access to family members who are close by. It's a big problem, and I don't have an easy solution for it. I think this is also a time where we need to be loving to our neighbors. So if we know people who are shut-ins, well, there's nothing stopping us from calling them. If they're old, they can pick up a phone. If they don't have internet, if Tina left us, so we thank her. She's my producer for the show, so I thank her for all the work, and so she's got to go put the baby to sleep. But getting back to your question, if we know people are suffering, then we should do the best we can to alleviate that suffering as best we can. Sometimes all we can do is call them. We can't actually physically go there because we might even put them at greater harm, but then we should call them. Or maybe we can organize amongst ourselves, we who are younger and have social media and things like that, we can organize to contact those people in our parishes or in our communities who we know may be lonely. Maybe we contact the secretary of the church, maybe the priest can collaborate with us, and we can put together a phone list, and we can call people and see how they're doing, make sure they have a connection, make sure that they don't need anything, maybe somebody to go out and get groceries for them, things like that. So this is the best that we can do at this time, but we need to think about other human beings, not just our own families, right? And so even if we can only do it by the phone or the internet, then we should use that. Sometimes there are situations where we can't do anything. But pray for them. Sometimes our hands are tied. There have been heart-wrenching, deeply situations in the last couple of weeks, especially in the last week, I would say, where we have had parishioners who need us and we can't get to them. Not because we don't want to, because we'll go. If there's an emergency, we'll be there. but because there are facilities that will not allow us in. There are seniors homes, for example, that are on lockdown because they have outbreaks, and security won't let us in. It doesn't matter how much I push and scream and yell and say that they have a right to get communed, they will not let me in the building. And so, yeah, there are people who are isolated from their families and they're isolated from their priests, and we can't get there to comfort them. And even when we try to FaceTime them or to speak to them on the phone, sometimes we get through, and sometimes the staff is overwhelmed with everybody else inundating them with these kind of requests that they've stopped doing that as well. And so now we have loved ones who are isolated, either in hospital wards or are isolated in seniors' homes. This is a big problem for us. And so we need to pray fervently for these people. If you have names, email me, Father Fr.TED@mac.com or at Fr.TEDTalks@gmail.com. My email is public on the church website. You can email me or private message me, send me names. We'll pray for them. We'll pray for them in our services. If people have passed away from the coronavirus, or just generally speaking, and you want us to commemorate them on Sunday liturgy at the end with a memorial, even though we don't have Koliva here and we don't have anything here, we'll still do the memorial service. We'll still commemorate them. You can watch it online. Send us the names. We'll read them. We'll do the best we can under the circumstances that have been given to us. So we're here for you as best as we can be, and you guys should be there for each other. That's the most important thing. I'm just checking out if there's any more questions. We're coming up to the hour. We're at 56 minutes. Maybe we'll take one more question before we sign off for the night. I see here, thank you very much, Father Ted. If you could do a Bible study sometime like this, that would be great. Yeah. In the future, maybe we will be doing more of this. Probably this went really well. We have 32 people online right now. It's really, really amazing. We didn't know how many people would show up or if we would actually have questions. So this is really great. We can do it again. So I'm thinking maybe maybe next week when we start Holy Week, we'll do another one. And maybe even during Holy Week, when I do the services, I can post some sessions and we can do some online live Q&A, especially not just talk about the coronavirus all the time, because I know people are really tired about hearing about that, but to talk about other religious topics, questions about Holy Week, questions about Pascha, questions about other things about Orthodox lifestyle, right? That's what I really like to get into as well. Not just talking about the pandemic all the time, because I think we've heard enough about it. So maybe next week, what I'll do is I'll speak with Tina, and we'll try to schedule another session in the next couple of, within this week, maybe. We might even do maybe one of the evenings this week coming up, because it's a quiet week. And then maybe we can start also with the bridegroom services. We can do these a couple of times during Holy Week and answer people's questions, especially after maybe they followed the service online. They have questions about the service. We can answer those questions as well. So I don't see any other questions for now. So I will say thank you very much, all of you. I know it's a tough time. God bless all of you. Keep praying at home. Keep your faith alive. Pray for us. Pray for your churches. Support your churches. Support your churches. And I do mean even monetarily, right? I know that sounds crazy. Some people don't like that, but all our churches across the board, across the country, they're hurting financially right now because their doors are closed. And we don't realize that if you don't support, so your local parish, if you don't support it like you do when you go on Sunday and you buy a candle or you put some money in the tray, we're not doing that anymore. So pretty much all the resources of the churches have dried up. So if you don't support your churches, then some of the churches might have difficulty staying afloat for when we reopen again, right? So we need to support our churches as much as possible. I know some churches have online giving. Try to do that as much as you can. And if you can't do that, that's okay. Pray for your church, pray for your priests, pray for your chanters, pray for your neocodos, the people who are going to the churches and keeping them running, for the boards who are trying remotely to run the churches and to keep the finances in order and to keep everything going, to minister to the people during this very, very difficult time. Don't forget your people, don't forget your priests, don't forget your churches, and support them so that they can support you as well. And we will all get through this together. It will pass, and we will all come back again together. And I'm hoping that our churches will be full, packed when they reopen again, and we will show the world how much we love our faith, how much we love our churches, and what it truly means to be Orthodox. So God bless you, and we'll be in touch. We'll try to schedule something in the next few days, during this week, right after the weekend, okay? Look on Facebook. We'll post it all over the place on my profile and Father Ted Talks. And God bless all of you. We'll talk to you soon. Okay? Take care.